This video focuses on the core training components of a CPP Learning Collaborative. There are 8 core learning components. We will go over them one by one. These are the learning components for CPP Learning Collaboratives organized after April 2018. Trainings arranged prior to 2018 may have slightly different requirements. Component 1. Participate in core CPP didactics. A minimum of 18 hours typically conducted through a 3-day training, although it can be broken down into smaller segments if the trainer is local. Component 2. Read the CPP manuals. The required book is Don't Hit My Mommy, a manual for child-parent psychotherapy with young children exposed to violence and other trauma. A second book that is highly recommended is Psychotherapy with Infants and Young Children, Repairing the Effects of Stress and Trauma on Early Attachment. Component 3. Work with families using CPP. Clinician participants will see at least 4 cases in the 18-month period. Supervisors will see at least 2. The reason supervisors have a lower number of required cases is that they will learn the model by supervising the team, and they usually have prior experience providing treatment that helps them learn CPP. For both, at least 2 cases must be treated for at least 16 sessions. At least one of these must have started from the beginning and included the foundational phase. Both must have included dyadic sessions. For clinician participants, the other 2 families must be seen for at least 4 face-to-face sessions in any treatment phase for them to count as learning cases. For each family, the criteria are that the child is under age 6 at intake, that the child has experienced at least one trauma, and we would count separation from a primary caregiver as a trauma. Now, for those who are working with at least 4 families, there can be one exception to this. One child could be age 6, or the clinician may choose to work with a pregnant woman or a baby under 18 months, where the caregiver's trauma history is the primary reason for referral, and the baby does not have a history of directly experiencing trauma. The requirement to work with families is typically completed during the 18-month learning collaborative. We may grant an extension, provided that the participant treated at least one case for at least 16 sessions during the learning collaborative, that they completed most of the other components of the LC, and that they continue in CPP supervision at least twice a month until they complete this requirement. This requirement does need to be completed within 3 years of finishing an LC. Component 4. Participate in reflective CPP supervision. This would be a consistent space where clinicians and supervisors reflect on their CPP work within their own agencies. They discuss and think about the impact of trauma on the provider, alignment of CPP and agency procedures, support for learning core CPP competencies. It's also a time when team members can share their different perspectives and expertise. We're hoping to develop a culture of team learning that supports future sustainability. CPP supervision is done by agency supervisors. It can be done individually or in a group format. Ideally, it occurs once a week, but at a minimum 2 times a month. Some organizations hold CPP supervisions on weeks when there is no consult call, at the same time and day as the consult call. Supervisors may be learning CPP at the same time as clinicians, and that's just fine. But we need to remember that supervisors also benefit from reflective consultation and ideally share their work with either their team or another CPP supervisor. Component 5. Participate on CPP consult calls. Consult calls involve case-based learning. Participants share their interventions, what they said and did, and not just family history. They're not expected to be doing CPP from the beginning. They're learning, and the role of the consultant is to support the learning. During the calls, the consultant provides consultation not just on the work with the family, but on CPP, in an effort to help the provider and the group learn CPP. The consultant highlights strengths, helps the group conceptualize the treatment using CPP. They support the group in thinking about where the work is reflective of CPP, where it might differ from CPP and how to bring it more into alignment with CPP. And they help the group learn new ways of intervening within a CPP framework. We expect that people will attend at least 70% of the calls during the 18-month period. This ends up being a minimum of 23 calls. Consultants make every attempt to provide at least 33 calls. To be faithful to the model, we tell people that they need to take vacations and focus on self-care, so we expect that they'll miss a few calls. Component 6, CPP Case Presentation. As part of their participation on consult calls, participants each present twice, unless the group size does not allow for this. They complete a case presentation template and provide clinical material for reflection, and ideally they send it to the group at least 48 hours before the call. Component 7. Participate in intensive CPP competency building workshops. There are 2 workshops held during the training period. Each is typically 2 days long. Learning Session 2 is held 6 months after the initial didactic training. Learning Session 3 is held 12 months after the initial didactic training. The content of the workshops is tailored to the needs and questions of the participants. It involves case-based learning through multiple case presentations, active dialogue, and practice. Component 8, Fidelity Monitoring. This is the last required component of a CPP Learning Collaborative. During the 18-month period, each participant completes fidelity measures for 2 clients, ideally one that represents a high degree of challenge for the clinician and one that represents a lower level of challenge. If a fidelity case ends prior to completing 16 sessions, the therapist begins fidelity monitoring with another family. Monitoring fidelity involves filling out the measures and then reviewing them and thinking about them with a supervisor or colleague. As required and scheduled by the CPP trainer, participants complete CPP supervision and consultation fidelity instruments. Let's review the different learning components. There are the 3 face-to-face learning sessions, senior leader involvement, work with families, thinking about and assessing fidelity to CPP, CPP supervision within the agency, and consult calls. These components combine to help participants learn CPP. The next video presents optional but highly recommended training components.